The night is calm in the pristine, rule-obsessed neighborhood of Willow Creek, until the stillness is shattered by the blaring wail of sirens. Red and blue lights flash wildly, illuminating the perfectly trimmed hedges and freshly painted driveways. A paramedic leans out of the ambulance, shouting with urgency. "Move your car. This is a life-or-death emergency." But in the middle of the street, arms crossed, stands Karen. Not just any Karen, the HOA Karen. The self-appointed guardian of neighborhood order, the enforcer of rules that only she benefits from. She tilts her head, unimpressed. Emergency vehicles aren't allowed in this neighborhood after 9 p.m. HOA Rules Section 14, Paragraph 6. You'll have to go around. The paramedics glance at each other in disbelief. Every second counts, and she's wasting them. A frantic woman, Susan Dawson, runs up, tears streaming down her face. "Please, my husband is inside. He's not breathing. Just move the CAR." Karen scoffs. "If we start making exceptions, what's next? Loud parties? Unapproved mailbox colors?" The crowd of neighbors, drawn by the commotion, begin recording. Gasps and whispers ripple through the small group. One man mutters, "Is she serious?" Then, in a cruel twist of fate, Karen's smug expression falters. Her breath catches. Her hand moves to her chest. She wobbles on her feet. The same paramedic she just denied takes a step forward, eyes widening. And then Karen collapses. The neighborhood of Willow Creek is a gated community with strict HOA regulations, and no one takes those rules more seriously than Karen Thompson. If there's a rule, she enforces it. If there isn't, she makes one up on the spot. For years, Karen has terrorized her neighbors under the guise of keeping the community orderly. Mailboxes half an inch too high? Fined. Trash cans out 5 minutes early? Reported. But she doesn't just enforce, she profits. With her position on the HOA board, Karen has unlimited power to impose fees, and many suspect she schemes off the top. Not that anyone has been able to prove it, yet. But everything starts to change when Jake Carter moves in. Unlike the other HOA board members, Jake isn't afraid of Karen. A former firefighter, he believes in community, not control. The moment he joins the HOA board, he notices how much power Karen wields, and how afraid people are to challenge her. Their first meeting is a disaster. "We need to rethink these policies," Jake says, arms crossed. "A $500 fine for the wrong shade of blue on a front door? That's ridiculous." Karen gasps as if he just proposed setting the entire neighborhood on fire. "Rules are rules, Jake. If we allow one person to bend them, society collapses." Jake leans forward. "This isn't society, Karen. It's a cul-de-sac." Tension builds between them over the next few weeks, but nothing compares to the night of the ambulance incident. It begins with a 911 call from Susan Dawson. Her husband, Mr. Dawson, collapses in their home, struggling to breathe. As panic grips her, she dials for help, her hands shaking. The dispatcher assures her an ambulance is on the way. The ambulance arrives within minutes, but Karen gets there first. When the paramedics try to pull into the driveway, they hit a roadblock, Karen's SUV, deliberately parked across the entrance. Karen storms out of her house, robe flapping. "You're not allowed to be here," she barks, planting herself between the vehicle and the driveway. One of the paramedics, a woman with tired eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, steps forward. "Ma'am, move your vehicle. A man inside needs immediate medical attention." Karen waves a dismissive hand. HOA regulations state that emergency vehicles can't enter after 9 p.m. unless pre-approved by the board. That would be me. "Are you?" The paramedic takes a breath, clearly trying not to lose her patience. "We don't need board approval to save a life." "Actually," Karen smirks, "you do." The argument escalates. Susan screams for help, begging Karen to move her car, but Karen refuses. "You can take the side entrance," she huffs, pointing vaguely down the street. "It's only an extra 2 blocks. An extra 2 blocks could kill him," one of the paramedics snaps. By now, neighbors have gathered, filming with their phones. Jake pushes his way through the crowd. "What the hell is going on?" Karen scoffs. "Just enforcing the rules. Unlike some people." Jake's jaw tightens. "Karen, I swear, if you don't move your car, I will move it for you." She laughs. "Oh, sure. Touch my vehicle, and I'll have you fined so hard you'll wish you never moved here." It takes 4 neighbors physically moving Karen before the ambulance can squeeze through the narrow space left between cars. Precious minutes lost. The video captures everything. Karen smirking. The paramedics frustrated. Susan pleading. The neighborhood watching in horror. And then, Mr. Dawson nearly doesn't make it. Later that night, the paramedics confirm that the delayed response almost cost him his life. If they had arrived even 3 minutes later, he wouldn't have survived. Jake, standing outside, his hands on his hips, turns to Karen. "You could have killed him." Karen shrugs. "Well, he didn't die, did he?" The video goes viral overnight. Karen becomes the most hated woman on the internet. People dig into her HOA history, exposing years of absurd fines, unfair rulings, and power-hungry behavior. It seems like Karen's reign of terror is finally over. Until, in a twist of karma, she collapses the very next day. And this time, she's the one who needs an ambulance. The morning after the ambulance fiasco, Karen wakes up feeling off. It's a deep, nagging discomfort in her chest, something she brushes off as stress from the unfair backlash she's facing online. Her phone is buzzing nonstop, notifications flooding in from local community groups, HOA members, and even the news. She groggily unlocks her phone, only to be met with dozens of headlines. Police Garlight, HOA Karen blocks ambulance, nearly costs a man his life. Pouting face, power-hungry HOA president sparks outrage after preventing emergency response. Video camera, viral video shows Karen enforcing rules over saving a life. Her face is everywhere. Every single article, every reposted video, every meme, all pointing to the same conclusion. She is the villain. But Karen refuses to see it that way. She mutters, "These people don't understand rules. They're all just dramatic." She clicks on the HOA group chat, expecting support. Instead, she finds a mutiny in progress. Jake. Effective immediately, we need an emergency meeting. The community is demanding answers. Susan Dawson. My husband almost died because of you. Neighbor 1. We're circulating a petition to remove Karen from the HOA board. Neighbor 2. She's a danger to this community. Who's with me? Karen's heart rate spikes as more and more messages flood in. She slams her phone down. Unbelievable. After everything I've done for this neighborhood. But she's Karen. She won't go down without a fight. An hour later, Karen marches into the HOA office like a woman on a mission. She swings open the conference room door, where the entire board is waiting, including Jake, sitting calmly at the head of the table. The room falls silent. Karen plops down in her usual chair, arms crossed. All right, let's discuss this nonsense. Jake leans forward, his expression stone cold. This isn't nonsense, Karen. You blocked an ambulance. Karen scoffs. I was simply enforcing the rules. Slam. Jake slams a printed document on the table. Nowhere in the HOA bylaws does it say emergency vehicles are restricted. Karen blinks, stunned. That can't be right. It is, Jake says coolly. You made that rule up. Murmurs spread around the table. You abused your power, a board member says. You could have killed Mr. Dawson, another chimes in. Karen feels the pressure mounting, but refuses to back down. She rolls her eyes. This is all being blown out of proportion. Jake flips over another page. Well, you'll be thrilled to know that thanks to your actions, your precious HOA is now under legal scrutiny. Karen's face pales. What? The Dawson family is considering legal action against you, Karen. And since the HOA board technically allowed you to run unchecked for years, they might go after the HOA as a whole. For the first time, Karen has no words. Jake continues. We have a petition going around to have you removed from the board. Karen stiffens. You can't do that. Actually, Jake says, flipping to the next page, we can. With enough signatures, we can hold a vote. Karen springs up from her seat. This is a witch hunt. Jake doesn't even flinch. No, Karen. This is accountability. By mid-afternoon, the entire neighborhood is buzzing. The petition spreads faster than wildfire. Every time Karen steps outside, she's met with glares, whispers, and camera phones recording her every move. She tries to do damage control, knocking on doors, sending out emails, even offering apologies, but no one is buying it. Then comes the worst part. News crews show up. A local reporter corners her in her driveway. Karen Thompson, do you have anything to say about the allegations against you? Karen forces a smile. This is all just a big misunderstanding. The reporter holds up her phone, playing the viral video. Is this also a misunderstanding? Karen's face burns with humiliation. I won't be answering any more questions. She slams her front door shut. Her once loyal allies are turning against her. Even the HOA members who previously feared her are now jumping ship. Her phone rings. It's an unknown number. She answers, expecting it to be a lawyer or an ally. Instead, a robotic voice on the other end states, "This is a courtesy call informing you that your property is now under community review. Due to violations of HOA ethical standards, you may be subject to forced removal from your home association. Further action is pending." Karen's stomach drops. Forced removal? They can't do that, she shouts at the phone. But deep down, for the first time, she's afraid they actually can. The stress weighs on her heavily throughout the day. By evening, her chest feels tight. Her breathing feels strained. Still, she refuses to believe anything is wrong. "I just need rest," she tells herself, ignoring the nagging pain creeping up her arm. She brushes it off. But the pain doesn't go away. During a heated HOA Zoom call, where members officially plan her removal, Karen feels it, a sharp, unbearable gripping pain in her chest. Her vision blurs. Her breath shortens. Then her body gives out. She collapses onto the floor. Someone on the Zoom call screams, "Karen? Karen?" For the first time in her life, Karen needs help. Someone dials 911. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The same paramedics she blocked the night before are dispatched to save her. But this time, there's a problem. The ambulance is delayed. Why? Because Karen's own rule states that emergency vehicles must use the side entrance at night. It takes them 7 extra minutes to reach her house. By the time they get there, Karen is unconscious. As paramedics rush her onto a stretcher, a neighbor mutters, "Poetic justice." Jake, standing at the edge of the crowd, shakes his head. "No," he says. "It's just karma." The moment Karen's body hits the floor, everything moves in a blur. The HOA Zoom call is still open, and through her laptop speakers, panicked voices shout, "Somebody call 911." The irony is lost on no one. The same emergency services she blocked the night before are now her only hope. A neighbor, Mr. Reynolds, who happens to be watching the meeting, immediately dials 911. His voice is steady, but there's a hint of something else. Satisfaction? Amusement? Karma? "Yes, it's Karen Thompson," he tells the dispatcher. "The HOA president. Looks like some kind of cardiac event. She's unconscious." A pause. Then, almost as an afterthought, he adds, "Make sure the ambulance knows to take the side entrance." That's the rule, after all. The dispatcher, unfamiliar with Willow Creek's absurd policies, doesn't question it. The call is logged, and an ambulance is dispatched. The delay begins. Inside Karen's home, the air is eerily still. The only sound is the faint hum of her laptop, where the HOA meeting is still ongoing. The board members watch in horrified silence, their faces illuminated by their screens. Jake bursts through the front door, having rushed over from 2 houses down. He sees Karen collapsed on the floor, her skin pale and clammy. "Damn it, Karen," he mutters, checking her pulse. "It's weak. Too weak." He immediately begins CPR. Chest compressions. Steady and strong. "Come on," he grits through clenched teeth. "Not like this." A minute passes. 2. His arms are screaming, but he doesn't stop. Outside, a small crowd has gathered. Susan Dawson, whose husband nearly died last night, watches from the sidewalk, arms crossed. "Ain't this something?" she murmurs to her neighbor. Another voice chimes in. She doesn't deserve help after what she did. Jake hears them, but he doesn't acknowledge it. That's not how this works. Even if Karen doesn't deserve mercy, he refuses to be the kind of person who picks and chooses when to help. But the ambulance is taking too long. "Where the hell are they?" he growls, sweat dripping down his forehead as he continues compressions. Then he remembers. Karen's own rule. His eyes widen in horror. 5 blocks away, the ambulance finally arrives at Willow Creek's side entrance, just as instructed. But there's a problem. The gate, the very one Karen insisted remain locked after hours, is closed. A paramedic slams his palm against the dashboard. "You've got to be kidding me." His partner curses under her breath, jumping out of the vehicle and rushing to the keypad. "Do we have the gate code?" They don't. They try calling dispatch, but no one has it on file. Precious minutes tick by. Back at Karen's house, Jake is starting to lose hope. He can feel it, the fragile balance between life and death shifting against her. Her breathing is barely there. Her pulse is fading. "Damn it, Karen, you are not dying on me," he mutters, pressing down harder. "Not like this. Not because of your own damn rules." And then he makes a decision. He doesn't wait for the ambulance. He grabs Karen in his arms, hoists her up, and carries her out of the house. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Jake doesn't stop. He moves fast, straight to his truck, where he throws open the passenger door and places Karen inside. He jumps into the driver's seat, slamming the gas. 3 minutes later, Jake's truck skids to a stop in front of the emergency room. A group of nurses and doctors rush forward, pulling Karen out and placing her on a stretcher. Cardiac arrest, Jake tells them breathlessly. I had to perform CPR. Ambulance never showed up. The doctor frowns but doesn't ask questions. We've got her. Good work. Jake takes a step back, watching as they wheel her inside. A long exhale escapes him. His arms are shaking. His heart is pounding. And for the first time since this entire HOA disaster began, he doesn't feel angry, just exhausted. 3 hours later, the truth comes out. The hospital staff, confused as to why an ambulance never arrived, made some calls. When they learned that the emergency crew was stuck at the HOA-mandated side entrance, they are furious. The news gets out fast. Headlines shift from calling Karen a villain to something even worse, a hypocrite. Police Scarlight, HOA Karen blocked her own ambulance, nearly dies because of her own rules. Fire poetic justice? HOA president's strict regulations almost cost her life. Skull karma comes for HOA tyrant. By morning, Karen is awake, disoriented, weak, hooked up to monitors and IVs. She opens her eyes and finds Jake standing at the foot of her bed, arms crossed. For the first time in her life, she doesn't have anything to say. You almost died, Jake says flatly. Because of your own rule. Karen swallows, her throat dry. Jake shakes his head. I carried you into my truck and drove you here myself. Because the ambulance, the one you insisted had to take the side entrance, got stuck at your locked gate. Karen stares at him, color draining from her face. For the first time, she fully understands what she's done. Not just to herself, but to the entire community. Jake takes a step closer. I need you to hear me, Karen. You are dangerous. Not just to yourself, but to everyone around you. And we're done letting you get away with it. She looks away. For the first time, she doesn't argue. Maybe, just maybe, she finally understands. Outside the hospital, the HOA board gathers. The petition to remove Karen from power has reached record-breaking numbers. Jake signs it without hesitation. This time, there's no vote. No debate. Karen Thompson is officially removed from the HOA. She loses everything. Her power. Her influence. And, in the ultimate twist of karma, her own house. Because as it turns out, the board found something interesting in their investigation. Karen has been illegally pocketing HOA funds for years. And now, she's about to face the consequences. For the first time in years, Karen Thompson has no power. She lies in her hospital bed, weak and pale, unable to do anything but watch as her empire crumbles from the inside out. The moment she was admitted, the HOA board, led by Jake Carter, took action. The petition to remove her was already at record-breaking numbers. But now, with the revelation that she nearly killed herself with her own rules, the board isn't just voting her out. They're taking back control. The first order of business, a full audit of the HOA's finances. Jake, alongside a handful of long-frustrated HOA members, spends the next 2 days digging through records, reviewing past fines, and contacting the community accountant. And what they find is worse than anyone expected. Karen hasn't just been abusing her power. She's been profiting off of it. For years, Karen imposed absurd fines for violations that didn't actually exist. An extra $100 here for unapproved grass height. A $250 charge there for a non-compliant mailbox. At first glance, these seemed like typical HOA overreach. But then Jake notices something odd. A portion of every fine was being redirected to a separate HOA expense account. One that Karen personally controlled. She was skimming off the top, Jake mutters, staring at the records in disbelief. All these years, she's been stealing from her own neighbors. And then, the worst part, she used HOA money to renovate her own house. Her brand new deck? Paid for by her own ridiculous fines. The expensive security system? Funded by HOA penalty fees. Even her legal fees, whenever she threatened to sue residents, came from community funds. Jake's blood boils. This isn't just HOA abuse, he says, shoving the documents toward the board. This is fraud. The room erupts. The next morning, the HOA calls an emergency town hall meeting. For the first time in years, the meeting isn't just a mandatory formality. It's a reckoning. The room is packed. People who never attended before are here now, angry, demanding justice. Jake stands at the front of the room, holding up a stack of documents. Proof of Karen's corruption. The murmurs grow louder. "She's been robbing us," someone shouts. "I knew those fines were bogus. How do we get our money back?" Jake takes a deep breath. Karen Thompson has been permanently removed from the HOA board. Effective immediately, she is banned from any future leadership role in this community. The crowd erupts in cheers. But Jake isn't done. He slams down the fraud documents on the table. "We're pressing charges." Gasps. Karen, still in the hospital, has no idea what's coming. Jake continues, voice steady, powerful. "Not only did she steal from this community, but we have enough proof to take her to court. We'll fight for every last dime she took." The residents roar in approval. For the first time in a long time, Karen isn't the one controlling them. They're taking back their neighborhood. While the HOA coup unfolds, Karen is still recovering in the hospital, completely unaware that she's about to lose everything. Her first clue comes when she checks her phone, which has been blowing up nonstop. Her email? Flooded with messages. Her voicemail? 50+ missed calls. She scrolls through, scanning the subject lines. Small blue diamond urgent. HOA board action against you. Small blue diamond legal notice, community fraud investigation. Small blue diamond, HOA emergency meeting results. You are out. Her entire body goes cold. She clicks on the most recent email. It's from Jake. Subject, you're done. Karen, the board voted unanimously. You're out. Permanently. Also, you might want to contact a lawyer. We found everything. The fraud, the stolen fines, the illegal fund transfers. You don't own this neighborhood anymore, Karen. And now, you're going to pay. See you in court. Jake. Karen nearly drops her phone. This can't be happening, she whispers. Her hands tremble. She rips out her 4-line and forces herself out of bed, ignoring the wave of dizziness that washes over her. She grabs her coat, her purse, and storms out of the hospital. But as she steps outside, she's greeted by the last thing she expected. A reporter. Karen Thompson? The man's voice is sharp, professional. A camera crew stands behind him. Karen freezes. The reporter steps closer, microphone extended. Would you like to comment on the allegations against you? Click. 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 The cameras flash. Karen feels like the walls of the world are closing in. By the time she reaches her house, it's already too late. A large legal notice is posted on her door. Her assets are frozen. Her HOA-provided salary is gone. She's under formal investigation for fraud. And worst of all, she can hear her neighbors celebrating. From her front porch, she sees it, a massive block party. People are laughing, drinking, celebrating her downfall. A banner hangs over the entrance to the park. Fire, Karen is gone. Welcome back, freedom, fire. Karen's breath catches in her throat. This was her neighborhood, her kingdom. And now, she's an outcast. For the first time in her life, Karen Thompson has no power. And no one is coming to save her. Karen Thompson stands in front of her once pristine home, staring at the legal notice taped to her door. The words blur together: fraud investigation, legal action pending, frozen assets. Her hands tremble as she rips the paper down, crumpling it in her fists. This isn't happening. It can't be. Just days ago, she was the most powerful person in the neighborhood, the unchallenged queen of the HOA, the enforcer of all rules. Now, she's a pariah, a disgraced fraudster, a walking joke. From across the street, Jake Carter watches, arms crossed. A slow smirk tugs at the corner of his lips. He's seen poetic justice before, but this is something else. Something wrong, Karen, he calls out. Karen whirls around, face twisted in fury. You did this. Jake raises an eyebrow. No, Karen. You did this. All I did was let everyone see it. She opens her mouth for a retort, but then she hears it, laughter. Across the street, the entire neighborhood is celebrating. Balloons, barbecue grills, drinks in red Solo cups, a full-blown block party. And the kicker? A massive banner hanging over the park entrance. Fire, Hoa Freedom Day. Karen is gone. Fire. Karen's face burns with humiliation. They're celebrating her downfall. She clenches her fists. This is MY neighborhood, she snaps. Jake tilts his head. Not anymore. And then, as if the universe wasn't done humiliating her yet, a moving truck pulls up in front of her house. Her house. Karen blinks in confusion. What is this? A young real estate agent steps out of the truck, clipboard in hand. Ms. Thompson? Karen slowly turns. Who's asking? The agent gives her a sympathetic but firm smile. I'm here to discuss your upcoming home sale. Karen stumbles back. No. No. This is my house. The agent flips through her clipboard. Actually, due to the ongoing fraud investigation, your assets, including this property, are being seized. Karen's chest tightens. You can't take my house. Jake steps forward, arms still crossed. Funny. You had no problem forcing people out of their homes over unpaid HOA fines. Guess the rules apply to you too, huh? The neighbors burst into applause. Karen whirls around, her entire body trembling with rage. I'll fight this, she shrieks. I'll sue every single one of you. Jake chuckles. With what money? Karen freezes. That's when it really hits her. She has nothing left. Her HOA stipend is gone. Her bank accounts are frozen. Her friends on the board have abandoned her. And worst of all, the same legal system she weaponized for years is now turning against her. A week later, Karen is officially evicted. The same way she once forced people to leave over minor infractions, she now packs up her belongings in shame. She loads her boxes into an old, rusted sedan, a far cry from the luxury SUV she used to drive around the neighborhood, barking orders. The final humiliation comes just as she's about to leave. A fire truck passes through the neighborhood, followed by an ambulance. And not just any ambulance, the very one she blocked. Karen watches in silent horror as the paramedics from that night pull up next to Jake, exchanging friendly waves. Hey, one of them calls out to the crowd. Glad to see y'all fix those ridiculous emergency vehicle restrictions. Jake nods. Yup. First thing we did after kicking Karen out. A cheer erupts from the neighbors. Karen's stomach twists. She lost. And worst of all, the neighborhood is better off without her. She grips the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turn white. I'll be back, she mutters under her breath. They'll regret this. But as she looks back at Willow Creek one last time, she realizes the truth. They won't. They never will. And she'll never set foot here again. Because HOA Karen is gone. For good. A week after Karen's eviction, Willow Creek is a completely different place. The air feels lighter. The tension that once loomed over the community, the constant fear of being fined for ridiculous infractions, all of it is gone. For the first time in years, the neighborhood feels like an actual community again. Jake Carter stands at the center of the cul-de-sac, looking around at the transformation. The mailboxes? No longer uniform, but unique and colorful. The lawns? Neatly kept, but without the unnecessary obsession over perfection. The neighbors? Smiling, laughing, talking to each other like they actually enjoy living here. He hears the sound of children playing, something that used to be rare. Under Karen's rule, families were afraid to let their kids play outside, worried she'd fine them for excessive noise. Now, the streets are alive with energy. Jake takes a deep breath. This is what a neighborhood should feel like. A place where people actually want to live, not just some rigid, rule-obsessed HOA dictatorship. Inside the newly reformed HOA meeting hall, a large group of residents gathers. For the first time in years, the meeting isn't about fines, penalties, or absurd rule enforcement. Instead, it's about rebuilding. Jake stands at the front of the room, a whiteboard behind him filled with new proposals. At the top of the list, heavy checkmark, eliminate Karen's old, excessive fines. Heavy checkmark, refund past residents for wrongful charges. Heavy checkmark, abolish the emergency vehicle restrictions, once and for all. Heavy checkmark, implement a new system where community votes actually matter. The room buzzes with excitement. We don't just need to fix what Karen did, Jake says, looking at the crowd. We need to make sure no one like her ever gets this kind of power again. The audience nods in agreement. A woman in the back raises her hand. What about her lawsuits? She swore she'd come back and fight this. Jake chuckles. She can try. The room laughs. The truth is, Karen's legal battle is already over before it even started. With the fraud investigation, she doesn't have the resources to sue anyone. She's too busy fighting to stay out of jail. And Willow Creek? They're moving on. The next weekend, the community holds an official celebration, HOA Freedom Day. It's the biggest gathering in neighborhood history. People fire up grills. Families bring out coolers of drinks. Kids run around with chalk, drawing on sidewalks that Karen once patrolled for unauthorized graffiti. A banner stretches across the street. Fire, new era for Willow Creek. No more Karens, fire. Jake stands next to Susan Dawson, the woman whose husband nearly died because of Karen's ridiculous ambulance rule. She watches the party with tears in her eyes. I can't believe this place actually feels like home again, she murmurs. I thought about moving for years. Thought it'd never change. Jake nods. Well, it did. Because we fought back. She smiles. Yeah. And because of you. Jake shakes his head. Nah. This was all of us. A loud cheer erupts as someone pulls out a megaphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to take a moment to thank the man who led the charge against HOA tyranny, Jake Carter. Jake groans, but the crowd erupts into applause. Someone shoves a beer into his hand. Speech. Speech. Jake sighs, raising the drink. All right. If I gotta say something. He pauses, looking around. For the first time in a long time, he sees a neighborhood full of people who are actually happy. No one's stressed over citations. No one's whispering about HOA fines. It's just a community. So, he continues. I think we all learned something from this, right? The crowd laughs. Jake smirks. Rule number 1, never give an HOA Karen too much power. A wave of cheers and laughter sweeps through the party. But rule number 2? If you do, fight back. Because people like Karen only win if we let them. The crowd erupts. Jake grins, raising his drink. To a Karen-free future. To a Karen-free future. The crowd echoes, clinking drinks together. Later that evening, as the party winds down, Jake finds himself sitting on the hood of his truck, watching the last of the neighbors head home. It's been a hell of a ride. And for the first time in a long time, he feels at peace. Then out of nowhere, his phone buzzes. A text. From an unknown number. You think you've won, but this isn't over. Jake stares at it for a moment, then smirks. He types back. It is for you, Karen. Goodbye. He hits send, blocks the number, and leans back against his truck. Karen may try to fight back, but at the end of the day, she lost. And Willow Creek? They finally won. Police Garlight, what do you think? Have you ever had a Karen in your HOA? Or maybe a neighbor who took the rules way too seriously? Drop your craziest HOA stories in the comments. Down arrow, down arrow, down arrow. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, make sure to white heavy checkmark like this video. White heavy checkmark subscribe for more insane HOA drama. White heavy checkmark turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Until next time, stay HOA Karen free. Winking face.